Hi, everyone. Welcome to Divinity Within. We're so happy that you're here to join us today. And today we're going to talk about relationships and kind of what that means for us. So welcome, Sherri. Welcome, Soul.
Thanks for
Thank
having us
you.
back. This is great meeting
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how we came to wanting to discuss relationships and what we're kind of all seeing when we're having our sessions and everything, because we were kind of crisscrossing, and there's a lot of themes that seem like they're, that we're all seeing. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was relationships in terms of in your actual household and family, and what it looks like when you feel like you might be on different paths because somebody's going through this ascension in a different way than the people that are around them. So let's kind of talk about that. What are you ladies seeing in terms of families right now kind of going through this awakening?
Go ahead, Sol. You go first.
Oh, I was going to say, you go ahead. Thank you. So I know when Lisa, when you were saying what topic, it was just the thing that came to the forefront of my mind to talk about, because I'm seeing a lot more couples that I'm reading for, and I love blending and looking at the auras together. So I've now re-offering the couple sessions that I've been doing, and Lisa was just reminding me backstage how long I've been doing it for, because I've read for you and Johnny years and years ago, which feels like another lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of what I'm seeing with different couples, I read for a gorgeous couple the other day. I won't get too much into it, but what you can sort of see is sometimes you'll see a beautiful harmony come together in terms of their future plans or future projects. And I love being able to read into that, talk about what I see for the conjoined soul mission, and then for them to have that confirmation to go ahead to take the physical steps to put the plans into action. Because having someone come in that doesn't know you as a couple and see different things that maybe you've had planned or you've had downloads or spiritual insights, and when I can sort of pinpoint or say those words out loud, it just makes it so much more real. So I think we're seeing the beautiful side of that coming into fruition. And at the other side of things, we've just walked through a monumentous lot of astrology over the last probably year and a half. And we're coming up now. We just had Virgo new moon, so we're getting things organized. We're detoxing things out emotionally that we no longer need, and really making sure everything's in place for this double eclipse that we're going to have come up September 7th, and then the September 21st will be the follow-up date. And that will set the tone for the next 6 months, not just in relationships, but to do with life in general, to do with our own unique soul missions. And we'll get into the astral interference entity side of things, I guess, that are also invading relationships and trying to harvest loosh out of them a little bit later in the show.
Yeah, definitely. What are you seeing, Sherri? What are you seeing in your practice?
I'm seeing a lot of couples, married and long-term, and new couples struggling a lot. I think one of the biggest themes I'm seeing is one of or the other is on their ascension path, is very spiritual. They're activating, they're awakening, they're really interested in learning more about consciousness and trying to really improve and better themselves, while the other is kind of stuck in the loop of 3D and dragging their feet, and it's creating a lot of conflict between the two. And so it's really hard to navigate that, and it's a big challenge because it's creating a junction point for a lot of people in their relationship on how is this relationship beneficial, mutually beneficial, and energetically in resonance anymore. Are we in resonance with each other anymore, and is one holding the other back, and vice versa? So I'm seeing that exponentially. And so one of the things that I've noticed is that there is a lot of interference going on with interpersonal relationships right now. And it could be with anything: siblings, friends, romantic partners. So it's not just spouses, but in marriages. But I am seeing an influx in that, and entities really looshing off of the division. Because, if you look at everything energetically and scope out, and we take the bodies out of this and we just look at the energy given off of, you can be hovering over a couple one has this bright light and is trying to advance and trying to improve and going through this healing journey, while the other has kind of a lower density field. And it's easy to kind of swoop in and push them apart and be the antagonist and cause arguments in between the two of them. And one thing that happened in my journey that's really helping me help others, a long time ago, my husband and I were in a kind of a rough patch, because we are opposites in a lot of ways, and that does work a lot of the times, but in some cases it can be rough. And we were fighting a lot with each other. And I had this vision at one point where I could see entities coming out of him and entities coming behind me and fighting with each other. And then that was translating into the physical reality as us fighting each other. But it wasn't us fighting each other, if that makes sense. We were being played with and messed with to fight each other because it was benefiting the entities around. And when I saw that, I'm not a competitive person. You all know that. Everyone knows that about me. But the competitive side of me came out, and I was like, oh, hold on a second. I was like, if I'm going to fight with my husband, it's because I want to fight with my husband, not because you're making me fight. And the competitive nature of that came out of me was like, I am in control. And so one way I've been coaching my clients is, think about this in a competitive way. And if there are entities connecting and enticing you guys, then we need to focus on that first. Clear the energy, clear the pathway, and then reboot, and then recenter yourself, and then see where you guys are as a couple. And then you guys kind of work from there. But when we got all this other interference going on, it really makes it more challenging.
I definitely agree with everything that you just said. And I'm seeing that as well. What about you, Sol?
Yeah, I think the show that we did a couple of weeks ago on energy clearing, I think that was a really good timing to do with the astrology and things and what Sherri's talking about. And yeah, I've witnessed the same thing and, seen different things flying around. And it's good when you can sort of pause and stop and deactivate your emotions and really look at, okay, am I being triggered as a bit of a food source for this loose entity situation? Let's just stop. Let's just do an energy clearing. Or, sometimes that's where it's good to pause and sort of maybe go into different rooms or go for a walk, go for a drive, do a bit of energy clearing, why you're doing that. I think that that's an important first vital step. And I saw it in Jim's post as well. And I saw it on Facebook too. Really interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And, it's funny is I've talked about it before. It's in my book too. But when I first started getting visions, it really went away from what, John and I were raised in a traditional Catholic kind of a, belief system, I guess you would call it. And it was potentially a problem for us in that situation. And there were times that, I thought the same thing. It's like you hear about bifurcation and you hear about, different timelines and things like that. And so you're looking at those situations as, does a bifurcation, if that's what we're looking at and that's what we're seeing, does that equate to divorce, right? Because if we're going on different timelines, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that is important to remember is that there's no locked door between timelines. And sometimes we can shift and move and kind of jump where we're more closely aligned. And then, something or someone can be going through something in your family, in your marriage, in your life, and you can shift again and do those things. But it's all growth to kind of go into the same direction because, if you're staying heart-based and all those things, when you're talking about what Sherri and Sol were just talking about, and you're talking about entities and entity attachments, it's very confusing because then it looks like something else, and it's something that's standing outside of you and you as a couple, you as a family, and then it looks, really different. It's a little scary. One time, just on a personal note, John and I were kind of going through that too, like Sherri was talking about with her relationship, where we just weren't linking up well at all, and it just seemed like we were kind of fighting or whatever. And I had a dream, and it was really kind of disturbing, and I don't have those. I never have dreams that are like like you would consider to be like horrific or any of those things, but it was really disturbing dream. And I woke up and I turned because I was kind of turned away from it. And I turned, and right in between us, there was a entity. There was something, say that it was like almost like an alabaster kind of color. And it was literally in between us. And I just kind of was like, and of course I did clearing and I talked to him. We went to the mountains and we just really grounded ourselves in, and we did a meditation up there and a bunch of other things to kind of bring that in. And I talked to Soul, and Soul told me to get this like black salt and put it, around in different things, and the doorway to put a little thing about, something not entering. Just we did a lot of things, and there was like a lot of prayer and things like that going on. But, when you're going through those things, it sounds, I don't know, to some people like it could be maybe not plausible, but sometimes they're actual. And the fact that he couldn't see it because he's not vision heavy like I am, but I just happen to, that seems to be my thing, is that I'm vision heavy and I could literally see it. And, so it's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Yeah, I think you touched on something important too. It is the women that tend to be more the visual side of things, or more attuned and womb-wise, into the universe, into the spiritual realms. Not to say that men can't too, but even if we look at it and bring it down to like a base hormone level, women, we have cycles with oxytocin and all other, things, estrogen, progesterone, that cycle through us each month. So we're used to constantly changing, constantly, having different emotional, whether it's upliftments or feeling back down. And weird side note, women have like 42% less serotonin than men, apparently, was what I heard in a study the other day. But when we look at men, they have pretty much like a straight kind of just testosterone. We'll see a dip in things, as age comes along, but it doesn't really have that same sort of evolution that the females have, in terms of we're constantly recreating ourselves, constantly changing. Every 7 years, women will go through a recreation cycle, whereas with men, and the men in this community are definitely very different, because when you have that spiritual evolution and that desire to change and to grow on a soul evolution level, we are going to see the men put in the work and invest and really look into, how can I get the best and the most out of this lifetime? So I think it's important too, because there will be disparities between relationships, in how you guys were saying as well, that you might have one that's more in the 3D and one that's sort of more on this, enlightened, illuminated path, where you can literally see it in the aura too. Luckily, the couples I read for are pretty much like on the same page, and aurically, you just get to see the energies dance and move back and forth between them. But I also want to point out, with talking about the 3D and the different, other side of things, we need to also be aware of red flags, of narcissist, of gaslighting, because those sort of people will attract the entities, and it will tear you down and suck the life out of you and take you off your mission. So, the other flip side of it is it can make you stronger once you realize that too. So I think it's really important, if we want to avoid a lot of drama and want to avoid a lot of heartbreak and sadness, to recognize things very much early on, and to really have, I guess, a bit of a mental, emotional guard up.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that, Sherri?
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, my dogs were barking. What you said, Soul, was really important a few minutes back. One of the things that I've noticed that helps a lot is taking the space between the argument, whether it's siblings, mother, daughter, whatever, whoever is arguing, because one of the ways that the entities work is amplifying the emotions that we have in the moment. And so if we can take our power and just say, I need a break, and separate, and each go into their own space and take a moment, then it defuels everything. And then the entities don't have anything to anchor in and to amplify anymore. And the fire kind of goes out, and it lessens their approach. Because like you said, both of you, these entities love to loosh off of the emotions that are created, rage, anger, whatever it might be between the couple or the friends or the family members. And so they want more of that. And so the more intense, the more the high that they get. And so taking a break is probably what my biggest recommendation is. Just take a break, take some breaths, and come back later. And because hindsight is 2020. That's kind of a saying for a reason, because we really do shift our perspective when we take the emotion out of it. So it takes a lot of courage in the moment to say, I need a break, and for the other person to respect their wishes. So if both couples are on board, regardless of if they're 3D or 5D or whatever they are, if we could just agree to just take a break from each other, then the likelihood of it intensifying or becoming something that it shouldn't be lessens significantly. So that's, a really good recommendation that I have. And I use it for myself all the time, because I am a stubborn Taurus and my husband is a stubborn Leo. And we are like two pit bulls fighting with each other sometimes, because either one of us are going to back down. But I'm such an alpha female that like, I'm going to win, because I will just keep it going. You know what? I'm so stubborn, but I've learned that I need to be more mature. So, so what we do is we just take a break from each other, and it works. It really does, because then neither one of us say things we're going to regret. And that's some honesty for all of you watching right there.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Our families are a microcosm of bifurcation, right? Because there's going to be people in your family that embrace expansion. There's going to be some people that resist it. And then there's going to be some people that totally tune out, not even trying to hear it. Sherri and I both, I know, have children that are like, la, 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 la. I don't know what you're doing. I don't, that's not my thing.
Me too.
So yeah, you too. Okay. So, it's just, it's a perfect example of that. And I think it's not to drag people with you in your thought processes and stuff anyway, right? Like the whole point is acceptance and allowance without having to think about what you think the outcome needs to look like. It's really hard to do in your family, especially, I don't know about you guys, but of course with your spouse, because you just think of yourself as moving together and kind of growing together and doing these things together. But especially with your children, because your children, you're so invested in their lives and the outcome and what those things can look like. It's really hard to kind of step back and just have an allowance and acceptance. For me, I find, and I've had, clients that say the same thing in sessions, that, to sit there and go like, you know what, I have no attachment to the outcome, when you feel like you're totally attached to the outcome and you want everybody to be okay and be on the same timeline and all of those things. But, it's how do families survive that different ideological, idea about what things are supposed to look like or what's okay. I know that for me, one of the things was when I first started kind of going through this, Emma and I would have pushbacks because Em really liked like scary movies, and she didn't hold it into any kind of a serious thing. And I'm trying to talk to her about vibration and putting things in your field and, that kind of stuff. Or she'd like dark music and things. And I was just like, no, you don't want to put that in your field. You're going to get an entity attachment and, all of those things. And because it's scary, but it was hard for me to kind of pull back a little bit. And as soon as I did, and as soon as I stopped talking about it, and as soon as I stopped trying to tell her how it was hurting her and all of those things, she kind of came to it on her own. Like a year later. It took like a year, but she did it. And so I guess there was a lesson in that for me to know that, everybody's moving, and sometimes it doesn't look like we're moving on the same timeline, and it looks like we're going in different directions. But like I said, there's no locked door between that. So you can shift and end up kind of in the same space anyway. And so to give each other that thing, and to realize like our homes are kind of a practice ground for unity and what that looks like, because we really don't want to all think the same way. It's to be able to move through love together, even if we don't exactly think the same way, right? It's like if we were an instrument, if we were a guitar, we wouldn't want everybody playing the same exact note, right? Because that's not going to make music. It's everybody having the different strings on the guitar, strumming those is what makes the music. So I don't know. I just think it's a hard thing to think about. You can feel like real serious about it, but the real thing I think is just to somehow try to find acceptance and allowance for where everybody's at the time. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, even if you can have just love and respect as like a base level foundation, the we try not to take things too personally. And I was reflecting on this, chatting with a friend yesterday, and she was saying, I'm trying to think in her words what she was saying. So it was like, if a female's unhappy at home, that will sort of, put stress into the relationship. And then she said that, if a male is going through extra stress at work, he'll tend to bring that home, and that will sort of suffer in the relationship. So it's really important for us to do our own kind of individual stress management.
Yeah.
I think that's our own independent responsibility, but I've definitely witnessed that, what you were talking about with my oldest, who's 24, and just, a bit of the pushback when you're trying to help or trying to give advice. And then 2 years later, they end up doing it and going, oh, wow, oh my gosh, life is like dramatically different, or that made such a huge, impact. So I think, we can sort of guide, and maybe sort of, because we've been through it, but I guess like with a lot of teenagers and early 20 somethings, sometimes it's, the parents don't know anything, or we don't have any wisdom or guidance to offer, or we've never been through that, so how would we know? But I think as you get older, you realize, oh, your parents actually have lived through a lot of the things that you've lived through. But I think also at the same time, because I'm also conscious and aware of, there might be people listening to this going through harder times or harder situations at home, please make sure that you're reaching out to people. If you are having a harder time, reach out to community, reach out to someone that you trust, getting a good therapist as well to look at patterns, look at cycles, look at your attachment style in relationships, I think is also very important, because when you understand how you're responding or reacting to other people, or why your emotions or your mindset tend to go in a certain way, that's when we can start to break cycles with things too. So I just want to say there is light at the end of the tunnel. If you are watching this and maybe wishing that things were a certain way, the first part is understanding the cycles and, knowing that you don't have to struggle by yourself too, I think is a big one, and that there's no shame in that. I think we're dramatically in a different place talking about emotions and relationships and things now compared to where things were 10, 20 years ago, where it was sort of, you don't talk about anything.
Yeah. Sherri, do you want to touch on what Emma is saying on the screen?
So it's kind of what I was wanting to bring up next, because, a lot of my clients, and I do have to honor these people that I talk to, where they are in very toxic, abusive, narcissistic relationships. And that's where we kind of have to take a different approach. So no one is bound to anybody. And, and sometimes we have lifetimes in cycles with certain people where they have been our husband or our wives or our daughters or our sons many, many times, and we're going through the same conflict. And so sometimes this is like lifetimes worth of work that we're trauma that we're working through. And so we have to come to a point where we decide, and we have the courage to stand up for ourselves. And I see this a lot, where I have a client who has had lifetimes where they have been, controlled by a certain person. And this is their life. This is the life that they are supposed to stand up for themselves. And so it takes a lot of courage for them to leave and walk away from the relationship, and that could be from a parent or any dynamic of a relationship. It could be your best friend that you're for your whole lifetime. And so right now, what I'm seeing with a lot of people is they're at that crossroads where they're really having a hard time walking away, but knowing that this relationship is not healthy for them anymore. And it's reached the point of toxicity. So the way that I've been coaching people is to recognize that sometimes it is actually better, regardless of the situation, but sometimes it's better to heal separately. Because sometimes when you're on those different resonances, sometimes that's a good thing, like you mentioned, but other times it can inhibit us from actually healing. So if you have a really toxic partner or a relationship with a parent or whatever it may be, and they're inhibiting you from moving forward, they are blocking you from moving forward, they are doing everything in their power to stop you from moving forward, whether they're consciously aware of it or not, we have to get to a point where we reevaluate. And one of my favorite things to say, and I've been saying this for years, is it's not always bye forever. It's just bye for right now, because we don't know what's going to happen. So it could be bye forever. but we don't know that for sure. So it's just like, I got to get away from you for right now.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot of divided families. Division is definitely a thing within these interpersonal relationships. And we do tend to travel throughout lives as a soul network. So the same group of people traveling together, different roles, but similar circumstances. So I believe all of us, regardless of who we are in the situation, are supposed to learn something in this lifetime. And we have antagonists in our life to encourage us to stand up. And this is the life where we break free. Because if I break free from the cycle of abuse, for example, that's not me, I'm just giving that example. My husband is not an abusive man, but let's say I'm a woman in a long lineage of being in abusive narcissistic relationships with regard to men. If I break that cycle, not only do I heal myself, but then I start to heal my mother, my grandmother, and the whole entire lineage and my soul collective. And that's where we are right now. So there is another component of this that I want to recognize, because I have a lot of those clients saying, I'm done, Sherri. How do I break free, and how do I do it? And releasing the guilt associated with removing yourself, because we can't take the burden nor the responsibility of carrying the other person. If they don't want to use their free will to heal, then we have to use our free will to create boundaries and walk away.
Right. You're right. There's a whole nother component to this. And it's kind of like I agree with what you were saying right now. And then what Sol was talking about earlier with like narcissists and things like that. There are some people that aren't meant to stay in your life and in your path. And it's sometimes having to go through some of these things to use discernment and recognize that, this is the end of the road for that relationship. And I think we've all, I know, have within this community, what, the people call the truther community, we've all stepped away from, interacting or participating in different things. It's not it's necessarily a negative, it's just a resonance thing. And you just recognize that that's not going to happen. But if you have people in your family, in your circle, that are literally making your, life difficult, your situation, it's not healthy. And it's not a good place for you to be. It's, to recognize that for yourself and to have the self-care. And like Sherri said, to heal that aspect of that. Maybe that's part of the reason you're here. Maybe that's part of the reason the interaction is here, so that you can stand up for yourself and move through that, in this life. What do you have to say, Sol?
That to me, like what you were just saying, I feel like a good flow on from that is talking about identity shifting. And Lorianne popped up, I think it was Lorianne, one of the comments that comes up consistently in the readings about, we tend to focus on different things. So we might be, focused on the cycle of the negativity and everything. And our mind and our brain, like the reticular activating system and the amygdala, will be firing and looking for like more evidence of this. And so we start to form an identity around whether it's, being beaten down emotionally, hopefully not physically. So this is where we need to sort of break the cycle of that and start to identity shift. So we have to disassociate from any of that victim mentality or victim mindset and become really strong, independent individuals within ourselves, whether we're choosing to have that time apart or choosing to stay in the relationship. And I think it's quite a common thing, especially for empathic people and women hormonally as well, that they tend to lose themselves sometimes in relationships. And so this is where, doing things for yourself, making your own decisions and choices, not having to, check in with everyone or sort of broadcast it to everyone what you're doing, but starting to like really think for yourself again to, can be one of those first steps to breaking out of that cycle. I also want to mention, we've talked about it on other shows, MACE method. So with MACE method, it's where you actually will go through a process and dissolve old identities. And what Dr. Jerry Mazinski talks about is that when he's worked in the psych wards and worked in hospitals, it's that people that have gone through psychosis or had, schizophrenia or other things like that with a lot of entities attached, when they dissolve the original trauma or the identity, and it's not like a talk therapy where you have to talk about everything, what they've found is the entities and the voices tend to go away. So if we're maybe not experiencing that kind of a magnitude of an issue, but we maybe want to dissolve an old identity. So it might be that I'm unlovable, that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy. Imagine when you collapse that wave, if we're looking at it from a quantum physics point of view, and then you start broadcasting a new signal out into the field of I'm lovable, I'm worthy. And that's when we start to magnetize different people, different places, different experiences to us with that new identity that we're forming. So it's to put in the work to dissolve and collapse maybe who we are. And a lot of this is imprinted from childhood. So it's not necessarily our faults. And sometimes it will come in imprinted from past lives too. We do a lot of that in my psychic tarot sessions. If past lives come up, I'm not leaving anyone hanging. We're dissolving old triggered, emotions or hidden trapped emotions, and talking about the specifics of a past life around that, because that's when you'll see things come in before the age of 7. Like if we have trauma or we have specific blueprinting before the age of 7, it usually is linked, and you'll find there's a parallel with emotions or circumstances from a past life too. So I think clearing up the old, disassociating from that personality or that emotional mindset that we're in, and starting to build new self-worth, new strengths, and really looking at how is like that future version of self, how can I like emote that and bring it into my field and feel that now. And that's what's going to start to change through that rewiring and practicing those emotions. You'll actually get new neural network growth in the brain. And that's where we see that permanent change. And you literally see it like little ropey structures that are kind of soldering on together, building a little bridge.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I like it too. Sherri, did you want to add anything on to what Sol was saying before we...
What I would love to talk about are the 2 cockatoos in the background that are like giving us a show tonight. And they're like involved in the conversation, and they're so distracting in a beautiful way. I'm just like, they're so beautiful.
They are. And my partner just put some bird seed out for them. They're so cheeky though. I think you girls have seen it where they're throwing the bird feeder. Luckily there's no chickens. The chickens are not out yet. So
they're so fun to watch. I would just sit there watching them all day in front of the window. I mean, they're so pretty.
We call it my cat's Netflix. So if she's sits in front of the heater, and we'll put birdseed out just so she can watch them. And she does this weird kind of like meow bark, which is like
That's really enrichment for them.
Yeah.
That's cute.
No, I didn't have anything else to say. That was brilliant, Sol. I think that was a beautiful way to kind of close up that part of the conversation. But I wonder if we want to get into the young adults and talk about them for a little bit, because that's kind of really important right now.
Yeah, tell us what you're seeing with that right now in terms of, your sessions and stuff. What are you finding? I know you've talked about it a little bit before, but we're talking about really people at the end of their teenage and all the way up until the end of their 20s, right?
Yeah, and I've said this for many years now, but I mean, I feel like we're like in the heightened energy of it right now, and families are really struggling through it. So I feel like it's important to talk about. Out of all the ages, I feel as though the new adult, so 18 to up until 30, is the group that is struggling the most right now. And the reason for that is because a lot of these youth are kind of these later generational bridge souls, because bridge souls can be of any age, kind of a part of the old structure, part of the collapse, and then here for the new. But these guys are special because they are the bridges of innovation and the new possibilities and like the creation of it. And so what I'm seeing, and this is true for my own son, who is about to be 21. He's in college, doesn't want to be there, can't find anything to study, can't find interest in anything. And a lot of my clients, I can't count how many families are going through this right now, where their son or daughter, newly graduated high school, in college, or not going to college, and they don't know what to do with themselves. They are really struggling to find their purpose, and they don't resonate. Most specifically, they don't resonate with any job out there. they have exhausted all the options, and they say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't agree with that. I don't identify with that. Nothing really is calling to them. And it's not because they're lazy, and it's not because they are just being bums, and there's the generation of not wanting to work and all these things that people like to throw labels on them. It's really because they genuinely can't find their purpose. And that is because they are supposed to be here at the tail end of the breakdown of the paradigms, recognize that there isn't anything really that they are tuned into and passionate about, because they're supposed to be the innovators, the ones that come up with the new ideas and create it. Now, the issue that I'm seeing is a lot of them are having trouble creating because they have a lot of blocks, because they're 3D thinking. So this is where the parents come in. And this is my biggest advice to people right now, is if you have one of those children, and what I'm trying to do for my son is say, it's okay, number one, and there's no pressure. And what is it that you want to see different in the world? What is it what area are you interested in, but you wish it could be a little bit different? What are your passions? And let's hone in and tunnel down to a few categories here, and then encourage them to say, if money wasn't an option, if schooling wasn't an obstacle, what would you do differently? And this is really simply for them to start to energetically manifest and create from the right brain perspective, co-create the new earth without actually physically doing it right now, but brainstorming. And this gets the juices going. It gets their right brain activated. It gets them inspired about something, even if they don't know how they're going to do it. It just gets them thinking outside of the 3D. And this is the biggest challenge that I'm seeing with these guys right now, and gals. They don't know what to do. And so a lot of them are spending all day playing video games, or they're depressed, or they have crippling anxiety. They don't want to go outside. They're introverted and shy, and the world is too heavy for them. Or they're outgoing and beautiful souls, but right now they don't have the confidence to be themselves. Every variable possible is occurring right now. And I'd love to hear your perspectives on this. But it's really going to take the adults. That's where we come in, and that's our role in this, is to be supportive of them, not to push them, and to say, let's work through this together. And so a lot of these starseeds tend to have open-minded parents, so that we don't make them, because the traditional thing is, oh no, you're going to be a doctor, or you're going to be a lawyer, whether you want to or not, or you're going to follow the family business, or you're going to do this because I think this is best for you. Our biggest mistake is saying, you should do this because I think it would make you money, or I think it would be great because it's a cool opportunity. We have to take ourselves out of the equation, and because we're not them, and instead focus our attention on helping to inspire them to figure out what it is that they're passionate about. And once we get those going, I think that their activation will occur, and then they'll start dreaming about it, and they'll start to download, because this is the last thing I'll say, part of the delay has nothing to do with them. Part of the delay and them not finding their purpose is we're still waiting for the tail end of this collapse to occur. So the pathway hasn't actually opened up yet for them to shine. So if you think of the analogy of like a football game or a basketball game, they're kind of benched right now, and they cannot go into the game yet because the players are still playing, and it's not their turn. So that is the other big issue. Is it's like, I know you're going to do something big, but let's hang tight until then. And what can we do to fill your time where it's productive as opposed to crippling? Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And we all have 20-something, children. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that too, Sol.
Yeah, I agree with absolutely everything that Sherri's just said too. And I noticed that a lot of these kids, especially the sensitive ones, it's almost that their energy system is really hypersensitive. And so they're walking around almost like naked in the world. And so they're energetically picking up on different things. And it does make them sometimes a little bit more introverted, or a little bit more protective, or hypersensitive on a confidence level too. So I think we are waiting for that collapse. And when you were talking, I was thinking about with the astrology too, that I think it's Pluto in Aquarius we now have. But just looking at like the different kids that we will have, or different children that we'll have for the different generations. So I've also just gone from, I think it's Uranus and Taurus for like the last 7 years, I think, if that's right off the top of my head. And now we're going to have it in Gemini. And my nephew was born, I think, just a few hours after it changed signs. So, like, bringing dramatic changes and shifts in the kids that are being born for the next 7 years. So I think it's going to be interesting when we look in the future, project 7 years from now. And I think that we're going to be in a different situation because we'll see some of the planets and different aspects and things change. And this has been just one of the hugest years in terms of like retrogrades. There's been so many retrogrades happening all at once. I think at the peak, maybe only a couple of weeks ago, we had 5 happening at once. So imagine the children that are born, in this year. So my little nephew was a 7/7 portal baby. So yeah, we're seeing some really interesting children be born at the moment. So yeah, I guess I think you said everything perfect to do with the kids from now. I just think that, we can as parents just hope and trust that we can give guidance, that we can give, a feeling of security and safety, protection, knowing that I guess the small part of what they've seen in their life, the world doesn't necessarily feel like a safe place or a sane place too. And then when you add social media into the mix, oh my gosh, like it literally is overwhelming and crazy. But yeah, a lot of these kids I notice have beautiful empathy about them. A lot of them would be natural born counselors, healers. So I'm seeing like a lot of soft, beautiful souls like that. But on a relationship side of things, and some of the younger people that I'm reading for, I do see a lot of like the feminine energy investing into masculine potential. So it's really looking at what is fact, what is 3D, what is reality, and what is maybe perhaps like our projection or our vision for someone. So I think that's a really important piece of advice for the younger people that I'm reading for is, sometimes we can want someone to live up to the highest potential, but they might not necessarily see that as their higher potential. And a lot of beautiful sensitives will tap into partners' potentials and things too. So just make sure that they're showing up in terms of like words of affirmation and action around, because you don't want to be stuck in a situation where you're hoping and wishing that things will change and that they'll come into the vision that you've maybe seen. And some people will be instigators or that bridge to help the person get to that. But you wouldn't want to wait a lifetime waiting for that side of things to happen, because we each have our own individual soul mission and responsibilities too. So it is okay to actually, break that connection or break that bond with people that are weighing you down or holding you back. And sometimes you'll be lifetime after lifetime trying to help the same souls. And so that's where it's important to break karmic contracts or agreements, or be like, you know what, you haven't learned this evolution, or you haven't learned this karmic lesson in the last 3 lifetimes or 10 lifetimes in some situation to see. It's time for you to go on and to, meet with someone or be with someone that you can learn that lesson with. Because not everyone's ready. We've got souls in many different periods of growth. And I think a lot of these kids, if we can also support them in trusting their intuition, that's probably one of the biggest keys that we can give them, I guess, as parents, is trust your gut. If something feels wrong, don't go down that road, and teach them that in every situation.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree with you too. And I'm going to talk about Emma a little bit. I know she's in the chat, but the thing is that there she is. The thing is that like I watch with her is she's in that 20 something, space too. And it's difficult for her to try to figure out like, where is she supposed to find her place and fit? And it's important to remember that, you're not going to find the place that you necessarily fit in yet, because maybe it doesn't exist yet. These are transitional times, and we're moving into something that's going to look different, and it's all going to feel different. And like Sherri said, that's what these people came here to help us move into. And so it's really going to be them. And so right now they're kind of sitting here feeling, like they don't fit into this, and they don't know exactly what they're supposed to be doing, because they're not supposed to fit into it. They're supposed to change it all. And it's a good thing for them to kind of remember. And I was thinking about, the resistance and stuff that they feel to be able to move into that part of them. And it reminded me, we were talking a little bit about our friend Katie from Katie in the Chorus, they were saying that resistance is simply the contrast that arises when new frequencies meet old beliefs, and that, you know, you feel that shift. So she said, you know, if you feel resistance, it's because you're moving forward or you're moving at all. Because if you were still, there'd be nothing for you to resist against, right? So it's a good thing, because it means that we're kind of moving into something new, into something different. But it doesn't feel like that when you're in the middle of it. It feels really uncomfortable, and you're not really sure what you're supposed to be doing. And I think for, you know, millennials and all the way to Gen Zs, it's kind of like this thing that they don't recognize, that they aren't going to follow in the traditional stuff with hierarchies and placement and families and all of those things, school looking the way that it did, and work and people working for pensions and those kind of things, because they're going to shift us out of that old world kind of trajectory into something new. And I'm here for it. Like, I'm excited. Let's, you know, because it's like,
I'm ready for it to
never
change.
works great. So
and you know, the alpha generation, the younger ones too, are spirited and a little bit different than the previous generations, where they aren't standing for it, and they are rebels, and they're asking for change and or demanding change rather. And I think the biggest challenge of my son's generation, the 20s, is that, you know, unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, you know, they did go through the indoctrination system a lot. Homeschool was not as popular back then. And so unfortunately, a lot of the young adults right now did go through the education system, which is all about indoctrination. And it doesn't enhance or measure the intelligence of anybody, because it's all about memorization and regurgitation and taking tests. And there's no real skill set that they teach you there other than follow what you're told and memorize and regurgitate. And they teach you that. Why? Because that's what they want people to come out of school, so that they can fit into the corporate world and how they want them to be. And so these children are coming out saying, well, I don't really like the corporate world. I don't like any of these jobs, but they've been programmed, whether they want to be or not, to think that way. So their problem is that they're having trouble thinking outside of the box as well. And the innovation in them has kind of been suppressed a little bit. And so that's igniting right now, because they're really trying to figure out what they want to do. And so they're exploring a side of them that has been dormant for so long. Whereas the younger generations, like my daughter, who's 11 going on 25 right now, and all of the younger ones I think they are demanding something different. So my daughter is in homeschool, and I'm opening up my own, and they're going to be taught from a young age to think outside the box, because these generations are not going to be working for these big corporations anymore. It's all about entrepreneurs and creating your own business, working for yourself, self-sustainability, and so many things that don't exist right now on a grand scale. So it's just that, you know, one group is just paving the way for the next group and the next group and the next group. And each group has its own skill set, and it's going to get easier for each one, because the more work we do for the next group, it makes it a little bit easier for them. So the 20s right now are going to make it easier for the next group, and so on. So I actually think it's a beautiful thing. And change takes time. It really does. So nothing can happen overnight. So the best thing us old farts can do is to just support that generation, so that they can do what they need to do. It's a lot. It's a lot going on.
And it goes back to, sorry, go ahead, Sol.
Oh, sorry. I think we're waking up from a mass hypnosis. And so everyone's feeling a little bit groggy and disorientated and wondering, okay, who am I? Where am I? Where do we go from here? But yeah, I wanted to say, Sherri said backstage about talking about angel numbers. And when it hit 444 on the clock, I had the little thing to be like, we need to talk about that. So did you also want to talk about the angel numbers too?
I did want to talk about that, but why don't you go ahead?
Oh, me. Okay. So one thing that comes to mind is I remember going through the end of a relationship, and I remember I was seeing 555 everywhere, which At the time, I knew what it meant. So it means the end of something, but it also means that something bigger is coming through, or that to make way for something new that's more in vibrational alignment. So I remember driving home from his house one time and seeing like 555. I think it was like 10 times on the way home. And I knew that that meant that, you know, it was to let go of the relationship, and that something better, more aligned was coming in. So I was kind of like happy to see the signs and confirmation, but at the same time, you know, sad to be letting go of a situation. Yeah, so that's my experience with the 555. But, you know, when we see 111 and things like that, it's like, you know, alignment numbers. So I always sort of see them as alignment numbers. You can have individual meanings behind it. Like I always see 333 or 747 for some reason, which, you know, when you see it, try and think, what was I thinking just moments before I saw those numbers? Because quite often it'll be to do with what you're thinking or what vibrational wavelength you're on. You know, instead of just reading the individual numbers, just try and think what it is that was that connection the moment before you saw it.
Yeah. I love that. That's absolutely correct. And I also think there's no one answer for this topic, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because it's coming up in almost every single session I'm doing recently. And I did a video about this, I don't know, years ago, and I want to talk about it again because I'm still getting the same message for those clients. Although these numbers have meaning, like what Sol just said, I've noticed two trends. One is if you're seeing the ones and the fours. And I'm seeing this a lot with my clients, 1111, 111, 444, or a combination of the ones and the fours. What I'm seeing in my sessions that are coming through pretty much for everybody is that they are angelic messages specifically, because angels tend to in the fours. So it means that you are either part of the angelic realm, which a lot of the clients that I work with, a big percentage of women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s right now are from the angelic realm. That's a whole other topic we could talk about another day. So that means that their angel is activating within them. Their angelic DNA is activating, and it's letting them know. And it's also letting people know that your angels are with you. But a whole other way to look at number sequences in general. So 111, 222, 333, 444, 555, anything like that, or 1, 2, 3, 4, we see a lot. And intimate numbers for us. What I would like to say is, as a collective, what is happening? Let's say everybody, and I'm in Eastern Standard Time. So everybody in Eastern Standard Time in any state that sees 111, 222, 333 throughout the day, it is an alignment that is letting everybody know that looked at the clock at that time that they are exactly where they're supposed to be, and they are aligning to the frequency of the collective consciousness in a very positive way. So it's just like it's a constant reminder. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, Sherri. Everything is as it's supposed to be. Your frequency is exactly where it's supposed to be. Now, that does not mean if I see 333 and I don't see 444, or the other people who don't see those numbers, it does not mean that you're not in tune. It just means that you're not seeing it in that moment. But people who see it perpetually all the time, it's a constant reminder you're exactly in the frequency that you need to be. Same with people in the other time zone. And so that's the message that I get repeatedly. It's like it's just letting you know you are activating, you are awakening, and you are exactly in the right path. And maybe you're questioning it, so that's why you're seeing it a lot, because your guides and your higher self wants to remind you, hey Sherri, everything's exactly okay. I know you're worried right now, but like keep going, don't stop, don't give up. And so that's what I wanted to bring up, because I'm getting those questions a lot, and I just thought that it would be helpful for people to hear it from that perspective.
Yeah, I see 1010 a lot. 1111 a lot, and 333 is always, and 444 too. So I guess I'm seeing those all the time. But one time I went to go take a picture because on the screen of our television in the front room, there's like cherry blossoms. It just looked really pretty, and it said 555. So I went to go do it, and I was kind of messing with my phone for a second, and I was having a problem like getting it, and I was like, oh, I don't want to miss the 555. So right when I clicked, you guys, I actually put it on Facebook. It said 555, but the seconds were also 5-5. So there were 5 5s on there. So I put it on Facebook. It was like, I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago. But it was
I love that.
Yeah, it was so cool. By the time, because I was messing with it, and by the time I got up there, it was like 5 5s. So I just thought that was really, really cool. But I don't know what, it just happen that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
is there anything you two want to talk about before we finish up tonight? We've been talking about so many great topics.
yeah. I think just the most important thing that I really feel like, when we're talking about relationships, work, at home, or all of those things, it's, to first of all make sure that you're always in of course, a safe place that you feel like you're going to be able to move through and grow. We don't want anybody to stay in anything that's not um, safe, or that you're not protected in. But the other thing is just to remember that these people and these places that you're dealing with relationships in, they're all part of something that we're there to learn from and to move through. So, when you get frustrated, when you feel like, I don't know, you don't really want to have to deal with the hard situations and stuff, I think it's good to remember that we're supposed to, on some level, there's something there for us to learn and to move through. So that's the biggest thing for me, because I notice, with my children especially, when they hit resistance with things, when they hit hard with other people and stuff, it seems like, rather than to kind of look at it and to figure out, like, what am I feeling, why am I feeling like this, they have a tendency to kind of want to move away from it and to turn away from it. And I think that it's really important for us to look at it and to analyze it a little bit, just so we can kind of see, like, what is this, and not lose that in the importance of it, in wanting to not have to deal with the hard part of it.
I think that's such a key, what you said about tapping into the emotion. Because if you think about the way that society's set up and major distraction, a lot of people don't actually know what they're feeling. And that's where it's creating a lot of confusion too. So I think if you can learn to tap in somatically or breathwork wise to the body, to be able to process the emotion too, because your nervous system will also be, holding that. So, good little tools and techniques, breathwork, somatic therapy, to be able to purge and let go of those emotions too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that too. And to remember that, if you're dealing with the stuff in your family, in your house, with your children, with your 20 somethings and things like that, recognize that everybody's doing the best that they can, and have some allowance for them to move through trying to figure out what it is that they need to be doing. And sometimes it can look like inaction, like Sherri said, it can look like laziness. It's not that. They're just trying to figure out where they fit or what's next for them. And life looks different than it did when we were that age. It just does. Like, everything looks different, And so if you had to step into it at this point too, it's not, I don't think it would be as easy. We sometimes we lose track of it, but the world looked different when we were in that stage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think even if you go back to the analogy that you spoke about, Lisa, with the guitar, with the strings. So imagine back in our time and generation of coming out of school, and it was like 6 strings or frequencies to choose from. And now it's like an orchestra of deafening music that's maybe not coherent. And they're like, how am I meant to find my frequency, find my vibe?
How do I find myself? That's so true. And the thing about it is our children are going to be the most raw version of themselves with us, right? Because they feel safe. Maybe more so with mom, maybe more so with dad, depending on the dynamics of the family. But my children are, for me specifically, they are the most raw version of themselves with me. They feel like they keep themselves together at school, with their friends, even around their dad sometimes, and for everybody. And then as soon as mom comes around, they will literally collapse in front of me. And they're just, sometimes they're screaming and crying, and it's all comes out. And I can interpret that as, oh my God, why are you so bad with me? Because a lot of parents think, like, why are my children so unruly with mom? But they go to school and they go to daycare and they're like, your child is lovely. But then when they're with us, they literally break down. But that's an honor. It really is, because they feel like I'm their one person in the world that they can just put the guard down and just let it all out. And so we tend to have that that dynamic with them where we don't have to, but we encourage you to let them let it all out, because they feel so safe with you. So then it's our job to then say it's okay, because sometimes they don't want, nor do they need us to change it. They just want us to hold space for them while they just lose it for a minute. And all we have to say is, I'm here for you. I love you no matter what. I support you. And that's really all that they need. And so it's really hard to be that person for others in this whole setup of what we just talked about. So those 20-year-olds and the teens, when they break down in front of us and they're losing it, it's not for us to have the burden of making it better, because we can't. But what we can do is at least make it easier for them,
Yes, let's talk real quick about this. Sol, you got that Spiritual Leaders Award.
Oh, I think it was the nominations. I haven't even checked to see like the results or if they've come through, but I got nominated in a couple of categories. Yes, I got nominated for building spiritual community and spiritual leadership, and nominated as a psychic as well. And I think it was
wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's such a beautiful surprise. And I also feel that it came at a beautiful point in my healing journey, what we were talking before about, in terms of like identity and things like that, and tapping in and clearing things of the past. Because I think in the past, I definitely felt, undervalued or, unlovable or things like that, very early on. I have great parents. So I think it's something that had maybe come through from past life and I'd seen in relationships. So when I'd been working a lot on all of that stuff the last couple of years, and seeing the awards and that come through, it's like the cherry on top of the cake. That's just like, oh, I feel like I've, reached a certain point in a lot of the individual work. So to see that now reflected on the 3D, because that's a lot of this is about doing the inner work. And that's when we get the 3D to shift and change too. So I just want to use that as a quick little teaching example, whenever you have a moment to be able to show by example and things. But I really resonate with what Sherri was saying too. And I witnessed that with my oldest daughter, especially when you have separation and things too. And you might have one parent that is the safe parent in terms of what you were saying, like the child can let their guard down. So I used to get a lot of things taken out on me because I was the safe parent where, one of my children could really be themselves around. And so that's where it does help to hear other people talk about it, because you might think you're individually just going through that, or feel really bad about that. But it does represent, that your child can be the softer version around you, or can just be more transparent or unguarded. And I think it's a beautiful thing if they can be unguarded around you.
Yeah, I agree. It's a gift to you really as a parent to recognize that the trust level is there on that, to that degree that they feel like that, they can do that. And the cherry on top is when we as adults and people can find, people in our lives that we feel like we can be vulnerable and open with. And I feel like I've done that with both of you guys. And, it's been really nice to just be able to talk to you guys and talk through things and get another perspective. That's, always a good thing. So, do be there that way for your children, be there that way for your spouse and your family and each other in the community. And I think that, while we're going through this and trying to figure out relationships, it's a beautiful thing if you can find people that you resonate with, because there's a lot, that you won't resonate with as you grow and you change. So it's a gift when you realize as you're changing and you're still able to have these people in your life. I think it's not common, but it's really a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Emma's comment. I don't know why I got emotional all of a sudden, but she loves watching us. I love Emma. She's like family to me, and we've never even met in person.
Okay. Sorry.
Well, I think this is such a great topic to talk about. And I think it's really, valuable information for this point in time. So I'm excited to see what kind of energies are coming up and what sort of shows we'll be doing after the eclipse season. And I just want to say thank you to both of you ladies and to our gorgeous soul tribe here. And thank you to all the amazing comments as well. You guys are really, what help us to get together.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you, Soul. I was laughing at Emma. She's cracking me up right now.
She's hilarious.
Well,
Ugly crying.
I love it. I mean, I don't love that she's ugly crying. It's so great. I just want to take a quick thanks to the community. You guys are great comments. I mean, it's a beautiful thing that we've created here, and I'm so glad that everybody is enjoying this. And as long as you guys are enjoying this, we're going to keep doing it, because our intention is to bring light to all of this and to share our messages and advice and just throw ideas off of each other. So thank you for your support, everybody. This is wonderful.
Yeah, we'll get something going again soon. And thank you to everyone that's here with us. And like she said, participating, it makes it more interesting, and also for everyone to know that we're kind of in this together. So until next time, thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.
Have a good evening or day on Soul Side.
Just starting.
Yeah. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.